The Newshour Special Edition.
Even as Israel prepares and has asked Palestinians to evacuate Gaza, and of course the huge build-up that is taking place along the border of Israel with Gaza, there is a lot of talk and a lot of anticipation as to what could actually be in store, with Prime Minister Netanyahu also indicating that this could just be the outset. To talk about that, I have with me a very special guest. Mr. Yair Lapid is joining us. He's the former Prime Minister of Israel and also the interim leader of opposition. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this evening. Let me begin by asking you, sir, Mr. Lapid, amidst the ongoing intense conflict in Israel, which has been marked by significant loss of life and a deeply troubling hostage situation, the events of October 7th attack stand out as a particularly distressing one. Tell us about your initial thoughts and reactions when you first learned about this attack, and how would you characterize that day, particularly within the broader context of Israel's historic experiences with past attacks?
Well, I think the right word is heartbreaking. Last Saturday, exactly a week ago, was the biggest killing day of Jews since the Holocaust. I mean, in one single day, about 1,300 Israelis were killed. As you've said, many were taken hostage. There are tens of thousands of who are wounded. I visited the Israeli south today, as I did the days before. This is ruins. I mean, those flourishing towns and villages in which peaceful Israeli citizens were living are now bricks and stones and blood stains. And, you know, the country is slowly trying to heal from this wound, but it will take time. I met yesterday a long-term friend of mine, a woman at her 80s, and I said, "How are you?" because I knew she was there. And she said, "Well, they killed my son, my only son, but at least I have cancer and I won't be here for too long." So this is the atmosphere, and this is the kind of feeling and thoughts and atmosphere we have here.
Right. Sir, it was previously reported that you had engaged in discussions with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu regarding the potential formation of an emergency government. However, you've recently also said that you will not be part of such a government. What are the factors or developments that have influenced your decision to change your stance?
Well, first of all, I don't mind answering your question, but is it okay with you that I don't care? I don't care about politics now. My people are being killed. And we will be working with the government, all the Israelis unitedly, in order to restore peace in the Israeli south. I was twice today in the bomb shelter in my house because of sirens, with a daughter with special needs. So you will understand why I don't care about the political situation. It doesn't matter whether we will form a unity government or work together from the opposition and the coalition alike. We are united against our enemies. This Hamas is the complete evil, and this evil has a face. Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is current day is Bin Laden, and he will end the same as Bin Laden. This is the only thing that matters to me and is important to us.
Right. So you've also recently made allegations of an unpardonable failure on part of Israeli leaders for not preventing the brutal weekend attack by Hamas. Tell us about the reasoning behind these remarks. Are you referring to intelligence failure or something else?
No, let me correct you. 3 weeks ago, I've said we should be better prepared for any events. Right now, we're going to point fingers, we're not going to name names. Everybody understands and everybody's admitting to the fact that there was a complete intelligence failure, and we will have to explore into this after this war is over, after this operation in Gaza is over, and after Hamas is totally removed like a tumor from our borders.
Right. Now, Israel has issued caution to the residents of northern Gaza, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, urging them to relocate south, a move that would affect over 1 million individuals. What are the fundamental reasons and the overarching strategic goals, in your view, behind Israel's directive for the evacuation of northern Gaza's population?
Well, we're trying to save the life of the innocent. I mean, we're working with the Americans, with the UN. We're going to operate there because we're going to go there and remove Hamas, because we're not going to live with this constant threat on our borders, and we're not going to have another day like last Saturday. the October the 7th is not going to repeat itself. And therefore, we have to move into Gaza. There will be an incursion of Gaza into Gaza in order to remove Hamas. Since there are people who are living there, we have told them to move south in order to avoid hurting the innocent. Right now, everybody's working in order to make sure they have a safe passage down south, except from one element. Hamas is doing its best to keep those people in the battle zone because they're using them as human shields. Their own people, their own children, their own elderly, they're using them as human shields, as a tool of war and as a tool of propaganda. So we are trying to save them, the people of Gaza, and Hamas is trying not only to kill us, but also to kill his own people.
Right. Also, Sir, Prime Minister Netanyahu on this very subject has conveyed that Israel's intense airstrikes in Gaza mark only the initial phase of the country's response to the Hamas attack. He's also said that Israel's response will, quote-unquote, change the Middle East. What implications can we draw from this? Is Israel potentially preparing for a broader conflict, perhaps even a ground offensive involving not only Gaza, but potentially the West Bank, Lebanon, or even Iran? How should we interpret these developments and statements?
No, I don't think anyone wants to make this into all-in-all conflict. Nobody wants to make this, I mean, we have warned Hezbollah up north in Lebanon from interfering with this. We have warned Iran. We have worked with the Americans and the French actually to communicate to Iran the fact that they'll better not get involved in this. If we can narrow it down to making sure Hamas is removed from Gaza, this will be enough for us. And nobody in his right mind wants to make this into a regional conflict.
Right. Also, sir, Israel has implemented a comprehensive blockade of Gaza, effectively halting the supply of essential resources, which includes food, water, and electricity. Now, this action has been criticized by many as a collective punishment for the millions of innocent civilians who you mentioned earlier, and also appears to be a violation of international humanitarian law, is also a view that has been expressed. How do you view this decision, and how do you respond to the criticisms and the concerns that it has generated?
Well, you should direct this question to Hamas. We told them to get out because we have an operation going on there. We didn't want them to be there. We don't want them to be there now. We're willing to be helpful in order to help them go out of the battle zone. And the only people who are keeping them there is Hamas. So you should take the question to Hamas. Take the question to Yair Lapid. Ask him, why is it that they're killing their own people right after they've killed ours?
Right. And also, sir, the presence of hostages numbering more than 100, including foreign nationals, adds a layer of complexity to this situation. This also poses challenges for any potential Israeli entry into Gaza. How would you suggest handling this extremely delicate and sensitive issue?
We will have to deal with this sensitively, as you've said. We hear horrific stories and we saw horrific pictures of rape, of violence against children, of beheading of some of the people who were captive, and we will have to deal with this in a very sensitive way and under the radar, not on television, if you'll excuse me.
Absolutely. And in fact, you mentioned beheadings. That's a very important question as well, because the Israel government has put out pictures of the babies being beheaded, and perhaps no words are enough to condemn those shocking acts of brutality and depravity. But the response coming in from Palestine is that there are children who are in fact on the Gaza side also who are amongst those who are being killed, and several of those in fact being evacuated also amongst the victims. So how do you respond to this counter coming in from Palestine to the pictures that have been released by Israel?
Well, I think my response is, how dare they? How dare they make this into an equation? They went down south. They particularly tried to kill our children and behead our children, and now they're preventing their children from leaving a battle zone just to make sure. Somebody asked me this question on Indian television. How dare they? It's Hamas's responsibility. It's the result of Hamas's actions.
Right. Also, sir, do you believe that pursuing a ground invasion is a wise course of action, or should Israel exercise restraint in this regard? What is your view?
Well, this is operative questions, and I'm not going to get into this, but let's make sure everybody understands. Yahya Sinwar is a dead man walking. We will get to him, and we will get to his senior officer, and they are dead already. They just don't know it yet.
Also, sir, during your visit to the UN last year, you've expressed your support for a two-state solution as the right path for Israel in resolving the Israel-Palestinian conflict. In light of recent events, do you maintain your belief in the viability of such a solution?
Yes, and I think we have now a further proof to the fact that the only ones who are doing, or the ones who are doing the best in order to prevent peace, are Hamas and Hezbollah and the fundamentalist Islamic terror organizations that are flourishing around us. So we'll have to get rid of them before moving into the process of making peace. People have to understand we will protect our lives. We didn't create after the Holocaust an independent state just to sit down on our hands watching our children being slaughtered and butchered again.
Right. Also, so where do you anticipate the situation is headed now? Are we on the path to a prolonged and protracted war, or do you envision a more limited conflict where Israel can attain its objectives in the near future?
Well, this is going to be long, because this time we're not going to give it up until our final goal is completed, which is the removal of Hamas from Gaza. And again, I don't know yet. We hope Hezbollah up north in Lebanon will not interfere with that. They will not if they know what's right for them. We want Iran not to interfere with this. If we get this limited to Gaza, then it's a matter of weeks, maybe a few months. If not, it might take longer. But this is existential, and therefore we're going to do whatever is necessary in order to complete our mission.
So I was actually going to come to that question next, because as you mentioned, we've seen some amount of action as far as the border with Lebanon is concerned. We've seen Syria come out and say that two of their airports, they are alleging, have been targeted by Israel. The role of Iran and Qatar has been repeatedly highlighted by Israel in the past. So there are huge implications for the Middle East. For instance, you've also tried to reach out to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, who've had a slightly different stance post the Abraham Accords as far as Israel is concerned. So for the entire region, there are huge implications and a lot at stake if this does turn out to be something bigger than what we currently see.
Well, I agree with you, and therefore we're going to do our best in order to prevent this from happening. I think it is important for everybody to understand they will have no misconception of what happened and what is going to happen. I mean, we were caught by surprise. Nobody is denying this. But we will not be caught by surprise again. We are actually at the peak of being alert to any circumstances or any movements in the region around us. And therefore, and you know what? We are not surprised again now, we are angry. So I think it will be a very bad idea of Iran or Hezbollah or Syria or anyone else to get involved in this.
Right. And also, sir, globally there have been protests taking place. Several countries have cracked down on those who have been protesting, and talking about the Palestinian cause. In fact, we've seen this happen in France. We've seen this happen in countries. The larger question is that even today, for instance, there have been violent protests that have taken place. We saw the pictures coming in from the Paris, where the Louvre was evacuated. In terms of the global response that we've seen and the crackdown by several countries on these protests, how do you view this? Because it appears that this entire issue is snowballing on the global stage.
Yeah, well, I would say there are two separate issues here. One is that the world is under a huge attack of fake news, of even fake movies. They, for example, took some movies of chemical warfare who happened in Syria about a decade ago and tried to present it like it was coming from here. So people need to educate themselves about what is really going on, and everybody who knows what is really going on know that we are on the just side of this conflict. So this is number one. Number two, and we all have to understand, we have a common enemy. Fundamentalist Islamic terroristic groups are the enemy of the civilized world, and we have to fight them together. And we have to fight them in Israel, and we have to fight them in France, and we have to fight them in India. They are the enemy of Jews, Christian, moderate Muslims well, the majority of Muslims, of course, they are the enemy of the civilized world, and we have to fight them together wherever they try to raise their head and hit us on the soft spots.
Right. So my last question to you is about the role of India. You mentioned very rightly, India too is a victim of terror, just as several other countries, including the United States, UK, France, etc., have been in the past. Also, the Prime Minister, one of the first people that he spoke to, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm talking about, is PM Modi. Of course, the two of them have a personal relationship with the two countries, and the people of the two countries also stand together at this moment of crisis because of the shared experience and the shared victims that have been of terror. How do you see this relationship of the two countries at this moment of crisis?
Well, first of all, you have to know that all Israelis are very well aware to the fact that India was one of the first countries to say we're standing side by side with the Israelis. And the fact that Prime Minister Modi was one of the first world leaders to stand next to us was so well appreciated here. And we also appreciate what was coming out of Indian media and the Indian street. I mean, this is true friendship. When do you need your friends? When everything is painful and stressful, and this is where you look around you to see who your friends are. And India has proved itself to be a real, true friend. This is touching. This comes in the right time for us. So we are thankful for the people of India and to the government of India.
All right, Mr. Yair Lapid, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us so candidly your views. And we certainly hope that peace and justice prevails at the earliest as far as Israel and Gaza is concerned. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir.